All right, so here we are going to factor some trinomials. So x squared plus 7x minus 18. So we have a negative 18 here as our, if you do AC, or if you just understand C, it's still negative 18. So we need factors that will create the 7. So I'm thinking 2 and 9. So I would do plus 2 minus 9, that's negative 7. So minus 2. Correct. And then if I multiply those, correct. So double check. I know those are my numbers. So I'm going to just factor x minus 2, x plus 9. And I'm finished. And I'm going to go ahead and do this one using the AC method as well, just to show you. So once you find your factors, you rewrite your trinomial as a 4-term polynomial. So x squared comes down, the negative 18s comes down, and then you fill in with your negative 2x and your plus 9x. Then we're going to factor by grouping. So in the first group, I factor out an x. In the second group, I would factor out a plus 9. Check, check. X minus 2, x plus 9. Holy moly. I'm done. And I got it correct. All right, so either method works fine. All right, next. Oh, I have no idea how long this thing was paused. Okay, so 3 times 14 would give us the negative 42 and also give us the positive 11. All right, so I listed the factors of a times c, which is a times c is negative 42. And then through that, I found 3 and 14 would work. So now, because I know those are my factors, I'm going to plug them back into my problem to create the 4-term polynomial. So 7x squared comes down, and then I'm going to fill in my numbers. A negative 3x plus a 14x. It's very important to make sure that you write whatever the variable component is on that middle term, on the 2 terms you put in to create the 4-term polynomial. So they must have x's on them. All right, so then I'm going to factor by grouping. So x comes out as a GCF. And then in the second group, be a positive 2. Check, check. 7x minus 3. And x plus 2. And we are finished. And we can always check it by what? Distributing through. 7x squared plus 14x minus 3x minus 6. 7x squared plus 11x minus 6. Yep. And so you know you did it correct. Okay? So pause it and you do number 11. All right, so the problem is 9x squared plus 11x minus 14. So it's already in descending order. There's no greatest common factor, so we should have gone straight to a times c. So a times c is negative 126. So we're looking for factors of 126 that can create an 11. So first of all, 1 times 126, well, clearly that's not going to give us an 11. 9 and 14, that's not going to give us an 11. When you have a 3-digit number, you need to try and divide it by double digits. So 126, just see what can divide into it. Or larger numbers, don't use 2 and 3 because that's not going to be able to get you close to what you need. You want to try and divide it by numbers that are closer together to each other. So let's see. 3. Let's do 7. So 3 times 42. And you can just go through, you can do 2, 3, 4, and just see what happens. 5. Try dividing it by 6. 6 and 21. 7. 7 and 18. All right. So essentially, I found my calculator. So what you should do is, and this is important because students like to give up in the process. Remember, you know the process. but you can't be certain that you don't have any factors unless you've written all the factors. So don't just assume that it's prime because you can't find the factors. You have to make sure you go through all the factors of the A times C and make sure that there's not one pair in there that can create that middle term. So when I finally get to it, I see 18 and 7. 18 and 7 can create an 11. So if I do a negative 7 plus an 18, that's a positive 11, right? And if I'm not sure, I'm going to check it in my calculator. Sure is. I'm correct. So negative 7 times positive 18 would be negative 126. So I know I did it correct. So now I'm going to just fill it in. 9x squared minus 7x plus 18x minus 14. And then you factor by grouping. So I'm going to split it. I got x, 9x minus 7. In my second group, my GCF is a 2. 9x minus 7. My parentheses match each other, so I know I did it correct. I pull out that GCF, and I combine my x and my 2. And I'm finished. It doesn't have to be difficult. It's a process. And once you know your process, you follow it through no matter what. All right, next. All right, so we're doing number 12. So we have 17x plus 12x squared plus 6. So on this problem, the first thing you need to realize is that it's not in descending order. So before you do 17 times 6, you need to see that, oh wait, 17 is not A. So you have to rewrite this in its descending order. So it should be 12x squared plus 17x plus 6. So now I look for a greatest common factor. And all three terms, they don't share anything but a 1. So then I just go to my A times C. So A times C is 12 times 6, which is going to give us a 72. So factors of 72, that can give us a 17. So you got to go through your factors of 72. And you can just use your calculator, right? And just go number by number if you want. Or if you're good at your timetables, maybe 8 times 9 pops out at you, right? Because what do you need? What are you trying to get? You're trying to create a 17. So you need factors of the number 72 that can add or subtract to create a 17. Well, 8 times 9 can give me a 17. So let's see. 8 plus 9. Check. 8 times 9. Positive. Check. Double check. I'm good to go. So 12x squared plus 8x plus 9x plus 6. You should pause this video right here and finish this problem. All right. So what I did here on this first line, when I split my 4-term polynomial into 2 so that I could factor it by grouping, a common mistake is when we don't actually use the greatest common factor. So if you're looking and you're going really fast, 12 and 8, oh, they share a 2. When you factor out a 2x, you would be left with a 6x plus 4. So if you don't notice it at that moment, you will notice it when you do the second part of the factoring by grouping and do the GCF for the second group. So when I did the GCF for the second group, I got left with 3x plus 2. Well, these don't match, which means I know something's wrong. So no, I got to go back and see where I made my mistake. So when I looked at my parentheses and I looked at the 6x plus 4, 6 and 4 have a common factor. I messed up. I didn't use the GCF. Because if I used the GCF, 6 and 4 wouldn't have a common factor, right? Whatever's left in the parentheses should only share a 1. And so I know I needed to be a 3x plus a 2, essentially. And so I go back and I say, what is the GCF for 12 and 4? The GCF for 12 and 4 is actually 4x. Now, mind you, just because I get excited about math, if you look at the 6x and the 4, what do 6x and 4 have in common? A 2? Or what if you pulled the 2 out? What would happen? I would be left with 3x plus 2. And what would happen on the outside? 2x times 2 is 4x. Oh my gosh. You can catch your own mistake as you're working the problem. That is why when you understand the process and what should happen, you are able to find when you make your mistake. That's what it's about. You're going to make the mistake. It's about when you can catch it yourself. All right. And so that's factoring by grouping. All right. One more. Pause. And you do 13. Okay. So on this problem, we look at it. It's already in descending order. Second step, check to see if there's a greatest common factor. Well, 14, 49, and 28 all actually share a 7. And if you didn't do the GCF, when you went to do A times C and you got that big old number, you should go back and look at your problem and say, oh my goodness, please let there be a greatest common factor, and just check to make sure. Okay, I'm not saying you won't get big numbers, but I'm saying always make sure there's not a GCF there before you freak out from a big A times C. So I factor out the 7. So when I factor 7 out of each term, I'm left with 2x squared minus 7x minus 4. So then we take that trinomial and we do A times C. So I get my negative 8. The factors you should have used were a positive 1 and a negative 8. You do your full term polynomial. You factor each by grouping. And so your final answer, bring down your GCF as the 7, and your factors should be x minus 2 and 2x plus 1. And that is factoring trinomials. Okay, so on this problem here, when we look at it, when I looked at it, 2x squared minus 4x plus 1x minus 2. So I factored this out wrong. I realized my GCF, I wrote a negative 2, but I factored it as if it was a 4 because I knew what I needed here. So again, with factoring, you can absolutely know everything that you're doing. That's really what math, period. But make simple mistakes which completely change your answer and make it incorrect. So that's why when you get to the end, it's important for you to double check it. So at least do the first times the first, last times the last, and see if these two come out correct. And then if they don't, you know you made a mistake. So essentially this should be a negative 4 here. All right, so this answer should be 2x plus 1 times x minus 4. So when I double check it, I get 2x squared minus 8x plus 1x minus 4, which is what I need. So it's correct. And then I bring down my 7. So this is our correct answer. So checking is important, obviously, and then just making sure that you're careful with your numbers, because once you get in a groove and you get in the process, it's very, very easy to just write the wrong number, even though you know how to do everything. So just make sure you show all your work so that, you know, you can get partial credit if you do get something wrong from putting it in the computer wrong, but you've done it right on your paper. So just show everything and make sure you write down all of your steps.